So not a bad run this morning. I suppose the question on everyone's lips, this rally we are seeing in Asia, the optimism over the rate cut in China, does it provide continued momentum just beyond today?
Carson, it certainly will be quite interesting if we can maintain this momentum, but certainly looking at today's performance, it really indicates, I think, that a lot of confidence has now come back into the market. Of course, last week we really saw a lack of confidence and conviction from investors. We were down about 2.8% last week, of course led lower by that materials sector. So it's really the exact opposite of what we are seeing that's driving our market today. Global growth concerns have now eased a little bit, and of course those falling commodity prices that we did see last week have now reversed. Over in London, we did see a huge surge in commodities, the likes of aluminium, copper, nickel and gold. So that all certainly helping that materials sector. So it will be interesting to see whether we can maintain some of this momentum. I do certainly think a lot of those global growth concerns have weighed on the market over recent weeks, but I do think that these additional stimulus measures that have now been introduced coming out of Europe and of course China, I think should provide some optimism now for markets, particularly in terms of that materials sector. We know that those miners really have been coming under significant pressure, so it will be really interesting to see whether we do see some support coming back in, and of course we are really seeing that today. Being very quiet in terms of a local economic data today, of course, so it really has been the leads from overseas markets and of course the pickup or the turnaround in those commodity prices that is driving the gains we're seeing today.
Speaking of gains, ALS, which is ticker code ALQ, all rather confusing, but no confusion over the rally. That's a near 17% pop. I'm just intrigued. This is an interim result. You've seen the half-yearly profit down 40%, although the revenue is on the up. Is it justifying this near 17% spike? I mean, in context, these shares nearly halved in the last 12 months.
Carson, that's exactly right. I'm actually not too sure whether it does justify it. We potentially could be seeing it a little bit overdone today. I'm actually quite surprised that we are seeing a surge in this share price. As you say, those underlying net profits were down 33%, but the fact that they have actually come in about 6% ahead of guidance that was provided in September, I think that's been a nice surprise for investors. Certainly helps, I think, when the company under-promises and over-delivers, and that's exactly what we've seen with the result today. Certainly seeing the surge in that share price, but as I said, some of the other numbers actually looked fairly soft. Those revenues were up about 3%, as you mentioned, but we actually did see a drop-off in profit margins, and also in ALS minerals business, those revenues were down about 22%. And of course, looking at that interim dividend as well, that fell about 42%. So some of the other numbers were actually looking fairly soft. If we look at the outlook commentary, they did remain fairly confident. There was obviously a lack of detail in terms of the profit guidance that they have provided, saying that markets and conditions at the moment still do remain too difficult to predict, but they do say that the third quarter, being that December quarter, should actually be higher than the first and second quarters. Of course, they are remaining focused on reducing their costs and also remain focused on integrating that oil and gas business of theirs with ALS Energy, so that should provide some strong growth for the future. So some of that outlook commentary actually did look quite positive, and confirming that they do remain fairly confident. So potentially could be seeing a bit of a reaction to that outlook commentary as well. But as I said, I'm very surprised we are seeing a surge in this share price today. Certainly being this mining services company, we do remain very cautious. There are still a number of risks there, particularly as a lot of these projects are coming offline. That's really putting a lot of pressure on profits and margins. So we certainly remain cautious on the outlook, but quite surprising seeing that surge in the share price.
No trade today for Paladin, a placement now to, and also some comments saying it's well placed to address the expiry of its remaining convertible bonds. So it pains to stress that bondholders will not be left out in the cold when it comes to its, I suppose, its ability to finance now future obligations.
Carson, that is exactly right. So I do think that the outlook or the outcome of this capital raising today has been very positive. One of the key challenges has in fact been generating sufficient cash to meet that bond repayment, which we know is coming at around November 2015. So a lot of analysts were very sceptical in terms of them actually meeting that. So I think the fact that they've now announced this capital raising, that should actually address their balance sheet concerns and should actually ease some of the pressure. Certainly certainly long term. So I think overall it does look fairly positive, this capital raising. They also provided some commentary on their outlook. They did say they are still on track to meet their FY15 guidance, and of course that is always positive. But we know those uranium prices really have been under significant pressure since the beginning of 2011. Paladin, as a result, has been down about 93% or so, so really has been affecting their cash and their balance sheet. But they are actually fairly optimistic in terms of those uranium prices recovering over the next 6 to 12 months or so. And of course, Japan has confirmed the potential restart of 2 of those reactors, so potentially could see that uranium industry coming back online. So I think the outlook for the long term is starting to look a little bit better. As I said, I think it does relieve some of that pressure in terms of this capital raising, but I do think we do need to see a pickup in that uranium price in order for the company to continue generating sufficient cash. So I think really that is going to be the key focus, those uranium prices, but certainly sort of medium to long term, I do think this will definitely ease some pressure.
Great to talk, as always. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Carson.